In this mini lecture, I want to begin talking about the persuasive speech because although we are in the middle of doing the informative speeches, you need to begin thinking about the persuasive speech. So for the informative speech, we are just telling somebody in our audience about something. With the persuasive speech, you're going to take a position on an issue and you're going to try to convince us that your position is correct. So in the informative speech, you are the teacher. You're just giving us information about your topic. For the persuasive speech, you are going to be the leader. You'll take a position and then develop your speech to try to convince us that your position is the one that we should believe, accept, or act on. So what exactly is persuasive speaking? Most of you are probably familiar with argumentative writing. You've probably had to do that in an English class along the way. Persuasion is similar. It's different in that you don't necessarily need to make counter-arguments, but it is similar in the sense that you want to develop strong support for your position and form your position in a way that logically makes sense. So persuasion is a deliberate attempt to influence the attitudes, thoughts, beliefs, or behaviors of another person. Now, the persuasive speech is going to be more difficult to prepare than the informative speech, but we use persuasive messages every day. We try to convince others to give us something, to do something, or to believe something. So we see persuasion all the time. We're bombarded by persuasive messages when we watch television, when we see advertising, certainly in political campaigns and opinion writings. So we see this every day. Now we just need to form it into a speech. So what should a persuasive speech do? First, you're going to narrow your listeners' options. As the speaker, you are providing guidance. You are going to be the leader of your speech. If there may be many options for, say, a particular problem, but you're going to narrow those and try to convince us that we should accept yours. You're also going to appeal to a particular response. And this can happen in 3 different ways. If you're trying to convince us of something, you want to kind of create a new idea in our head, maybe something we hadn't thought about before, or change an existing attitude, belief, or behavior. So an example of this might be antibacterial soaps. It's something that I think about every now and again. But when we really think about what antibacterial soaps have done to kind of kill a good bit of bacteria, but maybe have allowed the strongest ones to survive, it makes us think that maybe that isn't the best thing to be using. That would be a persuasive speech to try to convince us to do something. To stimulate, you want us to try to overcome some apathy or reinforce an existing attitude, belief, or behavior. So you want us to maybe think about donating blood. Finally, with accentuating, you want us to take some action. You're not just trying to change our thoughts or our opinions about something. You want us to actually do something in response to this. Maybe you want to convince us that we should stop using water bottles and we should go to water bottles that we can just fill at home because of the problem with the number of water bottles in landfills. So you are going to motivate your audience through different appeals. And the traditional appeals are logos, ethos, and pathos. Now we're going to cover this in another lecture. The purpose of this mini lecture is just to kind of get you thinking about the persuasive speech. Maybe you've heard those terms before, but don't worry about understanding them now. I promise we'll get to those in just a week or 2. So some tips for the persuasive speech. This speech is an 8 to 10 minute speech, so you need to choose a topic that is going to be manageable in that amount of time. Oftentimes students think that they need to choose highly controversial topics, and in fact that usually ends up not working out so well. 2 topics that are not permitted are abortion and legalizing marijuana, not because I have some thoughts or beliefs about that, but rather because there is no way you can develop that in an 8 to 10 minute speech. Legalizing medical marijuana can be permitted if you have some personal connection to the topic. Again, I know it's a hot button issue, but without that personal connection, my experience has been usually the arguments and the information that is gathered is really not strong enough to support your position in 8 to 10 minutes. 2, choose a topic that you have some personal connection to. This increases your credibility. I often have students do topics about become an organ donor. And in one particular section a year or so ago, I had two students in the same class do the same topic, which is absolutely fine. And they both did a good job with their speech, but one of the students had a father who was the recipient of a kidney donation, and she talked about how he was not expected to still be alive when she graduated high school, and in fact he was. While both speeches were both developed very well, she had a level of credibility and personal connection that was a little bit more compelling for the audience. Remember that when you want to influence your audience, you're not going to change their mind and have them, turn 360 and do something that they never thought that they were going to do before. So it's best to look for small amounts over a longer period of time. And you also want to make the audience understand the significance of your problem through your use of credible information, emotional appeals, and your own credibility. A persuasive speech is always going to have informative elements to it because you need to first inform us about what's going on. So it's going to be real important to use credible information. So just some ideas I like to throw out there for topic ideas. You'll find more of these in the module for this week. But you are, again, free to choose your own topic, but some topics do work better than others. And oftentimes I find that your personal connection to the topic is often the best indicator of a successful speech. I mentioned that you don't need to choose highly controversial topics and these big topics that would be difficult to manage in 8 to 10 minutes. So just a few topics that I've heard along the way that have been interesting and very manageable. Don't declaw your cat. I'm not a cat owner, but I had a student do this speech, and if I ever owned a cat, I would absolutely not have it declawed after listening to her speech. Abolish the penny. Shop at your local farmer's market. Shop at the thrift store. Maybe do a donation. I had a student donate to Toys for Tots. This was during the fall semester. We were coming into the holiday season. It's something she had participated in for a long time. Her father was a Marine. So again, strong personal connection, and did a real nice job of just, why we should donate a toy to Toys for Tots. Stop using antibiotics on animals, or stop using antibacterial soap. Those are just some kind of topic ideas. Obviously, as you see there, they do have a position with them. And so you don't need to do gun control, abortion, legalizing marijuana, some of these topics that would be difficult to manage. Okay, do not delay. I know that for many of you, you may not have delivered your informative speech yet, but developing a persuasive speech is usually more difficult than developing an informative speech. So you want to start thinking about that topic if you have not done so already, and start doing some research immediately. Again, you want to have some connection to your topic. This is going to increase your credibility, which is ethos. You need to have strong support material to develop your speech, which is logos. So your quality of sources is going to be very important with the persuasive speech. You're also going to want to use some emotional appeals, and this is pathos, and this helps your audience connect to your topic. One of the most effective ways to do this is by using stories or narratives to kind of paint a picture in our mind. Okay, a special note about persuasion and ethics. Your role in the persuasive speech is to provide convincing arguments, not coerce or force your audience to accept your viewpoint. So although skilled persuasive speakers do use emotional appeals, and you will be using emotional appeals, they don't do it by arousing excessive fear and anxiety in their audience and in their listener. Think about what history has taught us about demagogues using irrelevant emotional appeals, and which kind of short circuits a listener's rational decision-making process. For those of you who know anything about history, all you have to do is think of Hitler. Also during the 1950s, when people were so concerned about communism, Senator Joseph McCarthy kind of went on a witch hunt looking for people who were alleged communists, and there was a lot of interrogation, and there was a lot of fear that was stirred up in the American public during that time. Using emotion to elicit a response in a listener is not a bad thing. It's the extent to which you do it, and also if you use convincing arguments. So using stories and arguments and narratives to elicit an emotional response, even if that response is fear or anxiety, is not bad. The key is balance. Think about just, the effects of the harm of smoking or texting and driving, some of the commercials you've seen. There, sure, you want to elicit some concern, some fear, some anxiety in your listener, because doing so is going to make it more likely that they're going to consider your position. But if you need to also then balance that with good, solid evidence and facts. So you need to go get started. Think about something in your own life that you can adapt to a persuasive speech. Remember KISS, keep it simple, students. Don't feel you need to tackle hugely controversial topics. Even consider topics of local interest, such as visit the local state parks. And be open to ideas. You'll be amazed if you just let your mind wander and be attentive to what is happening around you. You might see something, you might hear something on the radio, you might be at a store, and think, oh, I didn't think about that before. That might make an interesting persuasive speech topic. As always, if you're having any trouble, please contact me, but just please don't delay. Get started thinking about those topics now.